The story commences in a grand mansion where a woman is walking with a lantern in hand. As she steps into a room, she lays her eyes on a man with a mark on his face, lying on the bed. Determined to succeed and save the world, the woman thinks to herself that this time she will accomplish her mission. As she puts the lantern aside, she takes off the blanket covering the man. But he suddenly opens his eyes in shock and calls out her name, Elena. In a quick reflex, Elena finds herself on top of the man. She tells herself that she won't repeat the same mistake she made last time when he bundled her up with a blanket. Confident that she's close to succeeding, Elena continues with her plan. However, the man tears up the bedsheet and manages to wrap her up once again, leaving Elena feeling helpless. The man pats Elena, remarking that it's getting late. Elena decides that next time she'll have to remove the bedsheets in advance. However, the man already knows what's on her mind. Despite sleeping without any sheets, there's still a curtain in the room. The man advises Elena to save her energy as there is no way to create a room without fabric. Then, he asks if she wants to sleep together like this, and Elena nods, secretly wishing to feel his muscles just once. She pleads with him to release her and promises that she won't do anything, but the man refuses to unwrap her. He tells her to sleep as she must be tired, despite not untying her. Elena recalls the last time when she fell asleep and woke up unwrapped, knowing that the man had untied her. Trying a different tactic, she asks if the man feels uncomfortable sleeping in full clothes and explains the health benefits of sleeping without clothes. The man remains silent, and Elena eventually falls asleep. Elena, the third child of Count Sorte, was a beautiful and wealthy lady hailing from a noble family. Her father had achieved success in various endeavors, and their county was abundant in fertile lands, making the family very affluent. However, her older sister, the firstborn, and her older brother were always engaged in a fierce battle over who would succeed the family. Thanks to this family rivalry, Elena never felt the need to learn or master anything beyond what was necessary. She was able to indulge in whatever her heart desired with her share of the family stipend, leading a carefree life. While some people pursue their desires with zeal, others may choose to take a back seat and cheer them on. And there's nothing wrong with that. During an outing, Elena encounters an old woman who pleads for a coin as she hasn't eaten since yesterday. The old woman, overcome by desperation, grabs Elena's clothes and begs for her help. However, instead of simply giving the old woman a coin, Elena orders her servant to buy her some warm bread and soup. The old woman's face lights up with joy as she gratefully accepts the food. As Elena departs from her, she asks to herself, could she be the one? As Elena slumbers peacefully, she is awoken by a voice calling out her name. She opens her eyes to find a maid frantically grabbing her hand, urging her to flee. Dazed and confused, Elena can't quite fathom why she is even in the capital at this moment. Suddenly, a deafening roar pierces the air and draws her attention towards the source of the commotion. To her utter shock, Elena beholds demonic creatures soaring through the skies above. Elena is bewildered by the sight of demonic creatures flying in the sky, and she turns to her maid for an explanation. However, her maid tells her to hurry and move, telling her though her father, sister, and brother may have passed away, she has to brace herself. Elena is even more shocked to learn that her family are already dead. The maid tells her that her father dying of illness over a decade ago, and her siblings in a carriage accident 5 years ago. She feels disoriented as she remembers being with her family just yesterday. Furthermore, she doesn't recognize the maid in front of her, although she is familiar with all of the household staff. Elena begins to suspect that the maid might be an imposter, and as she looks around, she realizes that the area they are in does not exist in the capital. The place is abandoned, resembling a dead city. Suddenly, a woman emerges from a nearby house, screaming for help. To their surprise, a terrifying creature has caught her right in front of them. The maid quickly turns around and tells Elena to keep running. Elena is confused and asks the maid what the creature is, to which the maid responds that it's a demonic creature called Elgir. Elena then asks why such creatures would be present in the city. Suddenly, the Elgir catches up to them and stabs the maid, leaving Elena in shock. Despite her pain, the maid instructs Elena to remain quiet as the creature responds to sound. The maid then tells Elena to head west and find a tavern called Sunrise Forest. She instructs Elena to tell them who she is and ask for their help. Elena runs through the dark night barefoot, relying on the signposts to guide her to her destination as instructed by her maid. Exhausted and out of breath, she finally arrives at the tavern and knocks on the door, pleading for help. The person inside asks for her identity, and Elena responds that she is Elena Sorte, the third child of Count Sorte. The man seems puzzled by the name at first, but upon opening the door and seeing her, he calls her Lady Mellisto and invites her inside. Confused by the sudden change in name, Elena wonders why he is calling her by a different title. The man instructs his wife to bring a glass of warm water for Elena. When Elena inquires about the identities of the couple who have welcomed her, the woman introduces herself as Anna and her husband as Hans. Noticing Elena's confusion, Anna inquires about her well-being. Elena then asks about the creatures outside, prompting Anna's surprise as she assumes Elena has never encountered the demonic beasts before, which have been ravaging the continent for a year. As Elena ponders the strange events of the night, she recollects her maid's revelation that her father and siblings had passed away long ago and how Hans had addressed her as Lady Mellisto. Overwhelmed with confusion, Elena asks Anna for a mirror. As she sees her reflection in the mirror, she drops it in shock and demands to know the current year. The answer shocks her as she realizes that 20 years have elapsed. She struggles to come to terms with this unbelievable reality, but the pain in her knees reminds her that this is all too real. As she grapples with the possibility of it being a dream, a loud crash shatters her thoughts, emanating from outside. Hans reassures Elena that they have sealed the walls, but then he realizes that the demonic creatures are coming from the roof. They tell Elena to go to the basement, and once she is inside, she suggests that Anna should come with her. Anna declines, explaining that she has to hide the trapdoor with ashes. She adds that she and her husband may not have come into the world on the same day, but they should at least leave it together. Overwhelmed by the scary noises of the demonic creatures crashing above her, Elena covers her ears in an attempt to block out the sounds. Elena thinks about her family, whom she misses dearly. Her mother was always kind to her, and when she passed away, Elena cried for an entire week. Although she used to resent her father for his patriarchal views and his focus on his business, he never missed any of her mother's birthdays or death anniversaries. Her siblings were always quarreling with each other, but they both treated her well. Her sister always showed concern for her feelings, and even though her brother said mean things to her, he made up for it by buying her plenty of dresses and shoes. In an effort to keep herself sane, Elena tries to think of a happy memory and drifts off to sleep. When she wakes up, everything is quiet. She tries to climb the stairs to check on the situation but finds everything in disarray. She discovers the bodies of Anna and Hans lying on the floor holding hands. Elena feels sick to her stomach and vomits. Right after she vomits, a demonic creature appears and stabs her. Elena wakes up in a panic, shouting and crying. Her maid comes to check on her and tries to reassure her that it was just a nightmare. Elena asks her maid to stay with her as she goes back to sleep. The next morning, Elena still can't shake the feeling that what she saw was real. She can't understand how she foresaw the future, especially as nothing had been different about her previous day, except for one thing. She gives bread and soup to an old woman. Determined to find the old woman, Elena sends her servant to locate her. When the servant finds her, the old woman refuses to move. So, Elena decides to go to her. They arrive at the old woman's place, which is an old tent. As Elena enters, the old woman greets her as if she had already known that Elena would come to find her. The old woman greets Elena, saying you have arrived as Elena approaches. She senses a strange energy emanating from the old woman. She wastes no time and asks directly if the old woman is the one who showed her the future. Elena is eager to understand the reason behind this revelation. In the future, Elena witnessed, the demonic creatures had invaded the kingdom and reduced it to rubble, while countless people perished. Anna revealed that the entire continent was plagued by these creatures, suggesting that other kingdoms were not faring any better. It appeared as though the world was on the brink of destruction. Elena refuses to sit idly by and watch it happen. She asks the old woman if there is a way to change the future, the reason for which she has been shown this vision. The old woman assures Elena that the future can be altered, and Elena inquires about how to do so. The old woman brings up Duke Kiffin Mayhart, a well-known figure whom Elena has only heard of but never met. Kiffin is often referred to as the Monster Duke. Curious to know more, Elena asks the old woman to explain. The old woman reveals that Duke Kiffin's child is destined to become the warrior who will awaken the power of the legendary Holy Sword and use it to strike down the Demon Lord, the only way to prevent the future Elena has seen. So it means in the future Elena saw the warrior who was supposed to kill the Demon Lord was never born. Elena presses the old woman for an explanation, but all she receives is a riddle about the warrior being born when the souls connect. Despite wanting more information, the old woman abruptly tells Elena to leave. Elena finds herself walking out of the tent unconsciously and realizes that nothing will change if she returns. So, she decides to return home. As Elena returns home, she searches through the entire library for any information on the demonic creatures, but is only able to find one book on the subject. According to the book, the demonic creatures were last seen several centuries ago, and come from a realm beyond that of humans and monsters. The Demon Lord is the master of these creatures, and he must be killed in order to prevent the world's destruction. Elena contemplates taking action to kill the Demon Lord before the invasion, but soon realizes that finding the demonic realm is impossible, and even if they did manage to locate it, there is no guarantee that anyone besides the warrior could defeat him. Furthermore, she knows that nobody would believe her if she were to bring up the matter. Elena grows increasingly desperate and grumbles that the Demon Lord should simply remain in his own realm. Feeling exhausted, Elena calls her servant, Albert. She questions him about any potential marriage arrangements for Duke Mayhart with other families. To her surprise, she learns that her cousin Miel's family is in talks with the Duke. Elena rushes to Miel's home and asks her if she is going to marry the Duke. Miel is taken aback and reveals that her father has sold her off for business purposes. Elena then asks if Miel plans to have children with Duke Mayhart once they are married. But Miel responds with anger and disbelief, stating that she would never do such a thing. Elena is confused and asks why, to which Miel questions if she knows who Duke Mayhart really is. Despite knowing him as a young, single, and wealthy duke, Elena is also aware of the curse of the ancient demons that has earned him the nickname of Monster Duke amongst the public. Duke Mayhart was born with a mysterious blemish on his face that defied treatment, and as time passed, people began to shun him. Rumors circulated in high society that the mark was a curse from an ancient demon, fueled by an old book that depicted a similar mark. Despite the mark on the Duke's face being different upon closer inspection, the rumors persisted, and an unfortunate accident only added to the speculation. When Elena's cousin Miel poses the hypothetical question of whether she would bear the child of the cursed Duke, Elena responds with a resolute, "Why not?" Elena believes that if the Duke truly is the offspring of a demon father, he should be a lord of the underworld rather than a mere warrior. Elena attempts to reason with Miel, questioning her belief in the unfounded rumors, but this only serves to anger Miel further. To Miel, the Duke's repulsive appearance is evidence enough of his tainted nature. Despite Elena's attempts to persuade her otherwise, Miel remains steadfast in her decision, declaring that she would rather die than risk contracting the mark. Elena persists in her questioning, wondering if the mark is contagious, but Miel refuses to engage any further and declares that she will never bear the Duke's child. Miel then discloses that she can bring along Sir Amber as her personal guard, to which Elena is surprised upon realizing that Sir Amber is Miel's lover. Miel explains that it's common for nobles to have affairs outside of their marriages, and since this is no ordinary union, she believes the Duke would have his share of lovers too. However, Elena knows that this is not the case, as history tells that the Duke did not have any offspring. As Elena's expression turns frustrated, Miel asks what has happened to her today, as she suddenly barged in and questioned if Miel is planning to have children. Instead of answering Miel's question, Elena asks her who proposed the marriage. Miel tells Elena that her father signed some kind of important contract with Duke Mayhart and used Miel to gain the Duke's trust. Elena reminds Miel that even though they are cousins, they are practically siblings, given their family's closeness. Miel is confused by Elena's sudden statement. Elena grabs Miel's hands and tells her to send her instead, as she is willing to marry the Duke in place of Miel. Marquess Linden appeared remorseful for having coerced his daughter into the marriage, as his face lit up the moment Elena proposed an alternative solution. He pondered over the idea for a brief moment, since he treasured Elena as his niece. However, Elena persisted, and in the end, Marquess Linden had a letter dispatched to Duke Mayhart, asking if he would consider taking Elena Sorte as his bride instead. Luckily, they received a prompt response from the Duke stating that it did not matter to him. This realization brought great relief to Miel and her father. At the Sorta residence, Elena finds her father confused by her request. She confesses that she has feelings for Duke Mayhart, despite his reputation as a monster, and wishes to be by his side and care for him. Elena hopes that her explanation will convince her father. He questions her about the Duke's rumored curse, but Elena is undeterred, viewing it as mere hearsay. She further argues that the marriage would benefit their family, as they would receive half of the mining profits promised by Miel's father. After pleading with her father, he eventually agrees to let her marry the Duke, bringing a smile to Elena's face. On her wedding day, Elena reflects on how her marriage is not like the typical arranged marriages of other noble women, but rather a sacrifice for the greater good. She takes a deep breath before entering the chapel, and is stunned to see a masked man in the room. As she approaches the altar, she realizes it is Duke Kiffin Mayhart, the man she is about to marry. Elena is entranced by the Duke's ocean blue eyes as her father takes her hand and they begin to walk down the aisle. Once they're closer to the Duke, she can see the captivating color of his eyes even more clearly. Miel whispers that it's impolite to stare, though Elena can't help but be curious. Suddenly, the Duke extends his hand to take Elena's from her father's. As they walk together, Elena can't help but steal glances at him, wondering if he heard Miel's comment and what she should do if he did. As the wedding ceremony commences and the priest blesses them, Elena finds herself drawn to the sight of Kiffin's large, muscular form and big hands. She starts to form an opinion about him as a person when the priest interrupts her thoughts and asks if she takes Kiffin as her husband and vows to love and cherish him for the rest of her life. Elena responds with a clear "I do" statement, and Kiffin does the same. Despite the formalities, Elena can't help but feel a strange sensation that makes her blush. On the day of her departure to the Mayhart castle, Miel is crying while saying goodbye to Elena. Miel's father thanks Elena, but she insists that the marriage is what she wanted. Her brother Edward teases her, warning her that she won't be able to enjoy her favorite shops or desserts in the duchy. However, Elena assures him that she can find those things there too. Suddenly, her sister appears and pushes Edward aside. She reassures Elena that if she ever needs help, she can come back home. Elena takes note of this. However, the siblings start bickering again in front of Elena. Then Elena's father calls her and tells her to call him Dad instead of father. She teases him by saying it grosses her out, which surprises her siblings, before they turn back to arguing again. Elena then thanks her father for raising her and asks him to promise to take care of himself, causing him to look sad as he says yes. As the carriage carrying the newlyweds departs, Elena's mind drifts to the future. She can't help but wonder about the fate of her family. Her father will succumb to an illness in just 10 years, and her siblings will be killed in a carriage accident 5 years after that. She wishes she knew more about these tragic events. What illness will her father get, and how will her siblings end up in the accident? She regrets not asking the maid from the future for more information, and when she tried to visit the old woman again, she discovered that she had vanished without a trace. Frustrated and helpless, Elena lets out a long, heavy sigh. As Elena gazes at her husband, Duke Kiffin, she finds nothing particularly extraordinary about him except for his height and physique. She also notices that he has a well-built body, and his eyes resemble the timeless ocean that never fades away. Duke Kiffin abruptly reassures her that he won't take off his mask during the carriage ride, but Elena clarifies that it's not why she's looking at him. This causes an uncomfortable silence to linger between them for the rest of the ride. After a week of traveling, they finally reach Duke Mayhart's castle. Elena is led to her room where she is helped by the servants to take a bath. Once she is finished, she begins to feel anxious and fidgety. As she waits for Kiffin, she paces around the room nervously. However, she spots a bottle of wine and quickly pours herself a glass, trying to calm her nerves. She reminds herself that this is just the first time and that she can get through it. The morning sun rises as Elena remains in bed, regretting that she eventually fell asleep despite her efforts to stay awake. She questions her maid as to why she wasn't woken up earlier, as it is almost noon. The maid explains that the Duke instructed them not to disturb Elena's sleep. Elena is perplexed, but the maid assures her that he believed she was exhausted from the long carriage ride. Elena decides to speak with the Duke in person and asks the maid to take her to him, but the maid informs her that he is currently not in the castle due to the appearance of monsters in the duchy the previous night. Elena is surprised as she had not heard of this before. The maid apologizes, stating that another maid was supposed to inform Elena but had forgotten. Elena then realizes that the Duke was not present last night due to the incident with the monsters, and she is relieved to have avoided any misunderstanding about his absence. The lands of Mayhart are fertile and perfect for commerce, but in the past, monsters would frequently descend from the mountains, making it difficult for people to settle. When Duke Mayhart inherited the duchy, he waited for the number of monsters to decrease during the harsh winter before leading his knights into the mountains. There, he bravely charged and defeated all the monsters, bringing peace to the lands. Remarkably, Duke Mayhart accomplished this at the young age of 16. Despite his remarkable accomplishment, he became even more infamous as the Monster Duke. Elena finds it appalling how shameless people can be. Despite this, the duchy prospered, and in honor of his victory, he reduced taxes in his lands for the next 5 years. Elena admires Kiffin's resourcefulness as she contemplates the past events. She then requests the maid to take her on a tour of the castle and introduce her to the staff. The servants are being introduced to Elena one by one: Ben, the butler of the manor, Lula, the head maid, and Cookie, the head chef, whose name amuses Elena as it reminds her of his profession. The only one left is the head gardener, who introduces himself as Gardener. Elena is intrigued by this new role, but the other servants explain that the Duke values his gardens greatly, which is why there are more than 10 gardeners in the manor. They inform her that the East Garden is the Duke's personal favorite. Elena then introduces herself formally as the new Duchess of the castle, but she feels a twinge of embarrassment as she says it. However, she quickly composes herself and states that she is Duchess Mayhart and that she will be relying on them from now on. The next morning, Elena feels anxious as the Duke is still nowhere to be seen. Initially, she assumes that he is simply preoccupied with his duties, but as a week passes without any sign of him, she becomes increasingly annoyed and starts to suspect that he might be avoiding her. While walking down the hallway, she sees some nearby maids and decides to ask them if they know anything. The maids are eager to answer her questions, and Elena expresses her concern about the Duke's absence. To her surprise, the maids admit that they are responsible for keeping the Duke away from her, as they have informed him that Elena is unwell and shouldn't be disturbed until she fully recovers. Elena is shocked and upset by this revelation and asks the maid to call for Ben and Lula. The maids kneel before Elena and apologize profusely, admitting that they were wrong. They explain that they acted out of concern for her well-being and had no ill intentions. Elena feels upset and frustrated, realizing that she had spent a whole week feeling anxious and worried because of their actions. She can't help but wonder if their misguided beliefs about Duke Mayhart being the Monster Duke led them to believe that no woman could ever like him. Ben and Lula arrive promptly after Elena calls for them. Elena asks for their advice on how to punish the maids for their wrongdoing. Ben explains that the most severe punishment allowed by law is to sever the tongues of those who commit such a grave offense. The terrified maids beg for mercy, but Elena instead decides on a punishment of 5 lashes, 2 days of starvation, and a week of probation. Lula escorts the maids away, thanking Elena for her decision. Afterwards, Elena inquires with Ben about the Duke's whereabouts, and he promptly guides her to his office.